Welcome back to the county seat. We are having a conversation today about Senate Bill 54, primary versus caucus. Now, it almost sounds like a slug-out match of some sort in a boxing ring, but not really. We have two distinguished visitors with us today to take each side of the issue. Dave Owen, who is of Owen Communications. He is a consultant for the Count My Vote. Jonathan Johnson, who's a sponsor of Keep My Voice, the other side of the coin, who's also president of
Medici Ventures.
Medici Ventures. Sounds like medicine and Da Vinci all wrapped up into one.
There you go.
All right. Thank you for joining us. So we left the conversation in the last segment just briefly introducing Senate Bill 54 as a compromise. So I want to start by asking, what do you see, Jonathan, as the advantage to a straight caucus system where people start in the caucus and go through the nominating process to convention? I will ask you the same in primaries after. So, Jonathan, you go first.
So I've participated in the caucus convention system in two different roles. One as a delegate who was elected by my neighbors to vet candidates, talk to them, decide which one to choose. The other way I've participated is a candidate. I ran for governor and spent a lot of time meeting with, answering questions of, and courting state delegates. I think the real virtue of the caucus system is it provides accountability for candidates. They can't just put out glossy brochures. They can't just run expensive television ads. They've got to meet with voters one-on-one, and in particular, educated voters who are representing their neighborhood and answer their questions, and they'll be held accountable for how they vote. I think that's a really important part of a representative republic, which is what we are.
Now, I've said that I'm from Owen Communications, advisor to Count My Vote, because I don't want to. I'm very careful about speaking for them. And now you're going to hear something from me that you won't hear from them. Everybody's overstating the effect of this. I think in the end, we're probably going to have a legislature very similar to the one we have now. We're probably going to have the same governor that we would have had anyway, and so on and so forth. The reason I care is that if I'm going to err on the side of more participation in giving people more voice, and so that's just that's a personal thing for me, that I believe in that. I believe in little d democracy.
So,
and I've watched the convention system go rogue too many times.
Well, and I mean, it has the potential, but I would suppose also a primary election with a hotly contested, slogan-based competition could probably go a little bit rogue as well.
I always tell people, ask Eric Cantor whether you can get taken out in a primary. I mean, he was slated to be the next speaker. You know, he's home mowing his lawn right now, and a very little-known, underfunded college professor beat him. And that drives a lot of the votes in Congress, is their fear of going home and getting primaried.
When I was a candidate, and prior to the convention, I would hold a teletown hall. I would call delegates, and they would listen. They would listen for a long time, and they would ask question after question after question. During the primary, when I would hold a teletown hall, I could have just as many or many more people on the phone call that wouldn't ask a single question. Wouldn't ask a single question for an hour long. I think that when people know that they are representing their neighbors, they take it seriously.
You do bring a point that I think is worthy of conversation here, and that is the claim that that you have a flyover effect. And obviously this program is called the county seat, so we look at our issues at a county altitude. And so there's some impact on county elections, and I know that the impacts of the dual system or the preferences for caucus or primary differs where you are in the state. But is that flyover factor, if you're looking at primaries where you're only at a statewide race looking at the total number of votes, does that not have the potential of excluding the points of view of the less populated portions of the state?
I honestly don't believe it does any more than is the case now. I mean, I still think that elections play out. I mean, the representative republic thing, how far do you want to take that? I mean, do you want to vote for the people who get to vote for the people who vote for the people who select the candidates? You know, I don't want to go to that. If everybody else in the world were doing it the way we were and they were getting a better result, then I might see some reason in it. But the fact is, most states are what we're going to. There's a signature The caucus will still have an influence.
There are 25 largely rural counties off the Wasatch Front. I don't know why someone running for a statewide office would spend their time not focusing on the 2 million people on the Wasatch Front, because that's enough to win. And it's important that those that represent the state understand what people in Juab County care about, or San Juan County, or Duchesne County. And the motivation to go there when you're dealing with delegates who are going to get you elected is a big, big deal. And I think that's why keep my voice in this representative government is really important.
And are you suggesting that the governor of Texas pays no attention to the rural areas of Texas? Are you suggesting that the mayor of Iowa or the governor of Iowa doesn't take good care to go to those farming communities and get to know people?
Here's what I'm talking about Utah. I'm talking about Utah, where we have a unique population along a small, maybe 60, 70 mile corridor at most of I-15. It's a thin, small corridor. I'm not talking about Texas and Iowa. I'm talking about Utah and what's best for Utah. You know, if I'm up in Brigham City, I want to make sure that my statewide representatives come up and court my vote and care and learn about my issues. I think that's important.
When I read accounts about this in the press, and this whole process going forward, the argument that comes out is that Utah, with its caucus and convention system, is unique. And it's the only place in the country, the only place in history that it's been. And so I'm wondering, when you relate that to national parties still running conventions to select their candidates, even though there are primaries in the lower levels of that, is that a correct statement, that the caucus systems have been eliminated everywhere in the country and that we are unique? Because both the Deseret News, the Tribune, Standard Examiner, and the Provo Herald have all made that statement in print.
Well, there are elements of the caucus convention system as it was practiced in Utah prior to SB 54 that were unique. But the overall, I mean, Iowa's a caucus state, Nevada's a caucus state. I mean, there's still, that's the selection method for presidential candidates. Some of them vary from that when it comes to state and local candidates. Others have something fairly similar. I know that in Wyoming, for example, because I've experienced there, the convention does matter, and how the delegates vote and who they endorse does matter in the local elections. It's just not it's not binding the way it was here. So I think we are probably the last vestige of the specifics of that system.
So it's not like we're unique because we were unique originally. We've become unique because everybody's migrated from it.
And I know that there are efforts in California to move back to something closer to the caucus convention system. Whether it will work or not in a state like that, I don't know. But I think there are folks that are so frustrated with the open, direct primary system there and how it's changed politics in California that they'd like to move something closer to what we're doing.
Now, let's not use California as the example.
Well, if we use an example of going wrong and wanting to come more like us, I think it's a good example. If we are peculiar, we should be pleased.
Final thoughts. We'll start with you, Dave.
The voters can never be wrong. And I guess I'm a believer in that the voters are accountable, the voters are responsible. For me, the caucus convention system is too exclusive, too many people. There's the problems of attendance, but there's also the problems of personality. I can imagine my wife, who is English and is actually the last presidential election was her first. She became a naturalized citizen just immediately before that. And I cannot imagine her going to one of the more rambunctious caucus meetings in this state. Probably in our neighborhood, it probably wouldn't be a big problem. My point is that people aren't willing to go, that aren't like us, willing to kind of stand up and, yell a little bit, are intimidated and they don't feel free to go there. And so for me, it's just simpler, easier. Let's go campaign. Let's show up, when the ballots go out or the polls are open on Tuesday, and do it that way. And to me, I'm going to err on the side of more participation.
I find that a puzzling statement because you said your wife's from England. Hasn't she ever been to Parliament? I mean, that's a pretty raucous bunch of guys.
Oh, yeah.
And gals. Your turn.
She's never run, I can tell you that.
This is what I would say. This is a First Amendment issue, a freedom of association issue. We're talking about political parties deciding how they will nominate their candidates, who then will participate in an election where the voters can't be wrong. But for the voters to tell the political parties how they must do their personal business is a freedom of association issue. And that's why the Keep My Voice initiative is titled the Freedom of Association Initiative.
All of that is fine. All of that is valid until you bring into the fact that the taxpayers pay for the primary election. And at the point that this private association elects to take public money, as we all know, that comes with strings. And therefore, if you were willing to go out and fund those elections and, fund everything about getting your candidate on the ballot, I suppose that might work out. But where we're holding statewide elections and the state of Utah runs them and the lieutenant governor is responsible for them and the taxpayer pays for them, that I'm afraid mitigates your claim.
Strings. The great puppet master has spoken. we should act like sovereign individuals, sovereign parties, not like puppets being pulled by the strings of the elite of this state.
Gentlemen, very good debate. Thank you very much both for attending.
Thank you,
My
Jim.
pleasure.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Now, usually I just tell people, if you want to go back and watch the extended version of this, go back and do so. I'm encouraging everybody watching today to go back and see this entire conversation. It's very illuminating. And I did not say Illuminati-ating. It's just to keep conspiracy. Yeah. Anyway, stay with us. We'll be back with more of the county seat when we meet with a candidate who's run under both systems, and we'll see how it affects his campaigning this very day. We'll be back with the county seat in just a minute.